Also, while I'm quick to chide Maddie for being obsessed with her missing brother, at least it made sense. A friend that you haven't seen since you were 6 and it's now been a decade? I'm sorry, but maybe go to therapy. That is in no way normal or healthy. Hello and welcome to Comprehension Points Video Snark. If you came here because you thought that this was an audiobook, please stick around and maybe learn some reading and listening comprehension skills. I read books and discuss what went wrong and how they can possibly be fixed. I'm continuing my read-through of the Wonderland Trials by Sara Ella. Not the first video, go check out the others, links are posted below. Chapter 33. The tune of Jack and Maddie's nonsensical victory song does little to brighten my sour mood. Will you, won't you, will you, won't you, won't you, will you join the dance? Will you, won't you, will you, won't you, will you join the dance? This doesn't even make sense. It's also not even the right words. It's supposed to alternate and then say, won't you join the dance? Anyway, Team Heart is celebrating their recent win. After having secured the win, they also earned a bonus clue. However, it's about as nonsensical as anything else has been so far, and Alice can't make heads or tails of it. I'm also certain that with 2 chapters and an epilogue left, we're not going to dive into this now, so I kind of don't care. Chess had begged off, claiming to be too tired. Alice knows that this is his way of escaping Alice after everything that went down. She doesn't blame him, though, but never once expresses regret over having said what she said. But something about Dina is irking me. She only divulges information when it's convenient. Seems rather, well, convenient if you ask me. Completely and utterly ignoring the fact that Dina literally sold out Charlotte so that she can continue to use Alice like a pawn. Alice continues to sulk as the others goof around. She doesn't trust anybody except Willow right now and doesn't know how the others aren't more on guard with each other. After a while, Charlotte comes in and says thanks to the week-long timeout that Alice accidentally had, the next trial is going to be moved up. What's with this Rule 42 business? It's an idiom. This would make way more sense if this was a sci-fi novel, but whatever. Anyway, the others explained to Alice that this Rule 42 is nothing but a different way of saying, because I said so. It's dumb, but whatever. Charlotte goes on to say that the trial will take place tomorrow, that the clubs are doing this in an effort to try and thwart Team Heart from getting even further ahead by having them being well rested. Although I don't know what kind of a state that Team Club would be in after trying to handle fire-breathing flamingos all afternoon, but whatever. She continues on to say that part of the trial is that you have to be ready for anything, anytime, which I guess makes a little bit of sense and adds to the overall whimsy. She tells them to go to bed and asks that one of the boys please wake Chess and tell him this. In the morning, Alice refuses to eat the crumbets and marmalade that Maddie had made for them, which is fair. I wouldn't either. She's also kind of mopey because Charlotte had told her that they'd talk in the morning, but then took off before Alice woke up, or as I like to call it, ensuring that there's drama going into the second book. She had left her sister a letter saying that there would be no timeouts this time and encouraging Alice to take her time. They go to the Tulgey Woods, which Alice feels is symbolic. This is where Chess had abandoned her in the normal world, leaving her to figure out how to get to Wonderland on her own. They're together now, but Alice feels like they couldn't be more apart. I'm failing to see the symbolism here, but okay. Jack comes over and mentions that it's the right time of day for the Jabberwock. Alice kind of laughs and is like, it's a good thing that this isn't the third trial, which is not the Jabberwock trial. However, it has the vibes of that Star Wars prequel, for the better, right? Meme. It wouldn't surprise me if these last 2 chapters were Alice deep diving into her fears and we left off on a cliffhanger, not knowing if she got to the real Wonderland or not. Jack continues on and tells her that every year there's always a trial in Tulgey Woods. One year it was a literal game of the floor is lava. Alice feels bad because Jack has been nothing but friendly towards her and she's thrown him under the bus of can't be trusted, but she feels to bring him into the fold of the nonsense that's been going down would only put a target on his back. Alice realizes that she's standing in the middle of everybody, not interacting with a single one of them. Everybody else is milling about, talking and laughing with their friends from the other teams. She wonders if her fear is being alone. She sees a random bird and thinks that the place she saw the nonsensical third clue was in her adventurer's almanac. She flips through to the Jabberwock poem and gets panicked, thinking that it's too early to face the beast. Some of the other players get into an argument saying that they're lost. One of them says that there are clearly defined paths that all go to the same place, so you literally can't get lost. Somebody wants to start over from the beginning. Another person says that it's clear that they have to pick a path to go down. Alice realizes that the signs pointing to the different directions don't say anything at all. She gets a message from Chess demanding to know where she is. She turns around, confused, and literally waves at him from across the crowd. He doesn't see her, and she watches with growing confusion as he walks over to a random blonde in the mistaken belief that it was Alice. A second message, more frantic than the first, sends Alice walking towards him. There seemed to be some kind of a barrier that made her invisible from the others, and now that she's off from that path, Chess can see her again. Somebody screams and says that she stepped on a mommy wrath, which is the thing from the trial clue, but the readers nor Alice still have no idea what that even is. Chapter 34. We left the previous chapter with somebody saying that somebody else had stepped on a mommy rat. At the start of this chapter, we start off by explaining about Charlotte's panic over losing Alice to the point that has left a scar on Alice's psyche to this day. And then we finally get to the mommy rat. It's to the point where I had almost forgotten what had happened in the previous chapter simply because this book decided to take us on a really random trip down memory lane. Anyway, the only other named character who isn't on Team Heart is Mouse, a girl who has yet to make an appearance after she physically bumped into Alice and was rude towards her. It was Mouse who stepped on the mommy rat and it bit her. Alice still doesn't know what the thing is, but is glad to have found out that they bite. The club scoop the crying mouse up and carry her off down one of the paths. The sign that had previously been blank now has clubs printed in the direction that they went. Alice literally does not know what this means. Excuse me, I need to go beat my head against the wall for a little bit over how stupid Alice is. Jess explains to Alice that nobody really knows what a mommy rat even looks like, only that their venom will linger in the system for days. Alice doesn't exactly like Mouse after a singular yet unpleasant encounter with the girl, but wouldn't wish that kind of suffering on anybody. Thinking about her enemies makes Alice think about Maddie, and then she goes to find her. Maddie expresses her horror at seeing Mouse like that. Maddie then says that she never intended for Alice and Willow to get hurt like that, and confesses that it was all Charlotte's idea to take Alice out of commission under the idea that Alice would end up getting hurt in the fourth trial. Alice thinks about all the clues that have been left around for her, but also a bunch of other stuff, like Charlotte's refusal to actually have a one-on-one conversation with Alice since she got back. She asks Maddie what she really saw in the Hall of Mirrors. Maddie tearfully tells her that she saw Alice, which seems kind of silly since everybody else saw people who were out of their reach, like their missing siblings or parents who had disowned them. Also, while I'm quick to chide Maddie for being obsessed with her missing brother, at least it made sense. A friend that you haven't seen since you were 6 and it's now been a decade? I'm sorry, but maybe go to therapy. That is in no way normal or healthy. The two of them hug and start crying. I was unaware that this was a scene that could invoke such emotions in people. I consider myself to be a bit of a crier, but I'm honestly kind of bored with this friendship, mainly because there's barely been any time spent on it, and Alice kind of takes Maddie's word that the two of them were once so close and never once questions why a 16-year-old would devote the past 10 years of her life obsessing over a friend who disappeared one day. And it's even worse when you realize that Alice never actually returns any of Maddie's platonic affections. Alice pulls away and says that none of these paths are correct, that the others said that all the paths would take them to the palace, but that they shouldn't be going there, and that maybe that's where the disappeared children ended up. She goes to the others and says that you sometimes have to step off the path. As already established, as soon as somebody steps off the main path, nobody can see them anymore, so none of the others notice as Team Heart slips away. As soon as they're in the forest, Alice gives 2 of her lives to Willow, who only has 1 left. Which seems kind of terrible since everybody else has all of their lives. Some of the others should be donating a life to her too, and not simply Alice. Alice says that since she's been promoted to the role of Team Queen, she's giving Willow the position of ace now. She then fills in the others about everything that's been going on. Mercifully, since this is the last chapter, this is quickly described in a single paragraph. Nave is the only one who actually doubts Alice and isn't going to blindly follow her based on some rather inelegant guesses, so that makes him a standout character in my eyes. A new path appears before Alice, and she exclaims about it. Chess says that there's no path there, but Maddie says that she can see it too. But then she starts to go off in the wrong direction from Alice's path. Willow starts to go in a different direction as well. Alice demands that they stop and explains that this is a labyrinth, that the thing is tricking them by showing them different paths so that they'll get separated. She asks the others what they all see, and they go around and describe the different paths. Each one conveniently matches the aesthetic of that character. But then Alice somehow reaches the conclusion that they are supposed to separate, which not sure how she got to that point, but okay, whatever. We waste an entire page with them saying goodbye to each other. It's maddening. As soon as Alice steps onto her designated path, she finds herself in the middle of a hedge maze. We waste an entire page of her stumbling around, which I think that I wouldn't mind so much, but this book is almost over, and I'm tired of this stalling. She finally finds a tree and conjures up a looking glass in it. In it, she sees a teenage Charlotte around the time that she would have been competing in her own trail. Allison climbs in through the looking glass, knowing that she's about to face the Jabberwock. Epilogue. The entire thing is so short, I don't even know why the author bothered. It's also told from Chess's point of view, where the rest of the story had been solely from Alice's. It's basically about how Chess stood there and watched as Alice walked away from him, and mirrors her leaving in the same way that his brother did. He then squares his shoulders and goes to find the Jabberwock on his own in order to not only get back to Alice, but also to find his brother. On that weird note, the book comes to a close. So, final thoughts time. The book was exceptionally lackluster in my opinion. It was trying so hard to capture the whimsy of the source material, but didn't quite understand why Alice in Wonderland worked so well. If 2000s era internet with phrases such as "LOL, so random" and "Rawr is dinosaur for I love you" had written a book, Wonderland Trials would be it. But Alice, as written in this book, was a whiny, obnoxious narcissist who never learned a single lesson in the entire 300 pages. And why should she have? Every single thing was handed to her on a silver platter. She wanted to go to Wonderland, so she was invited. She wanted Charlotte back. She came back. Alice was also maddeningly stupid about every single thing that she did. As I kept saying over and over, she never actually had to work hard to figure a single thing out. Even questions that should have taken weeks to puzzle through were simply guessed and guessed right the first time. She never once actually struggled with anything for more than a few chapters at the most before a solution would literally be handed to her via the author intervention. Every other character kind of existed. The second that the plot needed them, they would come trotting across the page, usually to drop some helpful clue into Alice's lap. After that, they would leave and never once cross Alice's mind. The narration said on several occasions that the members of Team Heart grew close as they trained, but not once did the story actually bother to show us any sort of emotional bonding. Instead, we got page after page of Alice's internal teenage angst. Not to mention Alice's weird feelings for Chess. Again, as soon as he was off the page, she barely spared any thoughts about him. It was always me, me, me. If the author didn't whack us around the head with their relationship whenever Chess came around, I probably would forget about it. Although I do have to give some tiny bit of credit where it's due. At least Alice hadn't met Chess for the first time at the trail. I do hate those insta-love stories, as subplot as the romance here is. I hated how there were so many references from the source material hammered in over and over, even to the point where the author had clearly forgotten she'd used it previously and would use it again later. Even when it didn't make sense, she had to squeeze in one last thing. But in the grand scheme of the bad plot, terrible pacing, and worse characters, the references were annoying, but kind of a non-issue. Overall, this book was a bit of a chore to get through, simply because I thought that it was insulting to the source material. I've seen Alice Does Wonderland, which is an adult film, and I thought that the adult parody did a better job handling the source material than this. Anyway, the second book of this is due to come out in September. Obviously, there's some time between now and then, so I must find something to fill that time. That being said, the next book that I'm going to be doing is Funny You Should Ask by Lisa Sussman. The first video for that will be posted on Monday as usual. Thanks for listening to my Bookstore on YouTube. New videos are up every Monday, but stick around because I sometimes drop random videos on other days too. Just as a reminder, even if you can't financially support me, there are other ways to help me out. The first is watching this video as well as all of my other videos. It's also important to like and subscribe. Finally, you can share this video with all of your friends so that they can help as well. If you're already caught up with all of my videos, you can go to Tumblr for my main book snarks, always free and updated every morning. And if you've read all of my main snarks, you can find even more snark on my Patreon. You can access it for $1 a month. Members also get early access to my main Tumblr snark. Special thanks to Dawn, Phoebe, and Nikki for supporting me on Patreon already. If you want to hear your name in my video next week, either support me on Patreon or make a one-time donation. Do you like my snarks so much that you want me to snark your writing? I do that too. For just $6 per chapter, I will tell you how awful that your writing is. But not to worry if you feel like you couldn't take the criticism. I also offer regular book editing as well, just 1 cent per word. You can contact me on any of my social media platforms if you have further questions. If you want to read some of the things that I've written, you can purchase my works on Amazon. I have a slew of erotic short stories and 2 full-length novels. I also frequently run flash sales on my stories, and if you aren't following me on any social media, you might want to do so just so you can know when I might be offering things for free. Links for everything will be posted below. See you next week, guys!